Okay, welcome to Videorial P5J003. This is the third in a series of videos in which I'm going to show you how to code a stylized version of the von Neumann architecture block diagram that you can see on the screen at the moment. In the first video, I showed you how to create a p5.js template document or project. We then took the size from that document and we created a CorelDraw document. The CorelDraw document will enable us to create a more detailed sketch or design of what we want to produce. And the beauty of CorelDraw is it's very easy and straightforward to move and manipulate basic geometry. So in this particular video, I'm going to show you how to get even more organized in terms of your CorelDraw document. And also import the images that I found and that exist in my plan. So basically get ready for actually drawing it and applying shapes and creating the design. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my planning document, which you saw in the previous video. This is what I'm going to produce, this all-terrain vehicle. These two images I'm going to import into my CorelDraw document. And since the last video, I've actually created this very rough sketch where I've just tried to simplify the all-terrain vehicle even more and also take into account, where the different components of the von Neumann architecture are going to go, and also sizes and proportions and things like that. It's very rough at this stage. It doesn't really matter. It's just a concept. So first things first is we need to get the images into CorelDraw so that we can use them as a reference. Now, I'm in a Google Doc at the moment. If I right mouse click and copy and then go into CorelDraw and then try and paste, you can see it won't let me. If I try Control V on the keyboard, it won't work. So in order to do that, what I'm actually going to have to do is, luckily I've saved a link to the image, is I'm going to open the image up in a new tab, right mouse click, copy image, then go back into CorelDraw and paste it in. Now you'll see that there's a large portion of the image that isn't really needed, like the trees and then the road here at the bottom. Now one of the ways that we can crop an image quickly in CorelDraw is to use the shape tool. So what I'm going to do is just use the shape tool, and you'll see that these nodes appear on the corner. I'm just going to click and select the top two nodes, and then I'm going to hit Control on the keyboard and move my mouse down. I'm then going to do the same thing at the bottom, but this time I'm going to move my mouse up. Now this particular image is only really going to be useful for picking colors. So I'm just going to shrink it down and move it out of the way. Thus, now I'm going to go back into my planning document and I'm going to open that up in a new tab, right mouse click, copy image, back into CorelDraw, edit, paste. Now you can see that this is coming, it's a huge size, so I'm going to go to the zoom tool, right mouse click, right mouse click. Again, I only want this side view, so I'm going to use the shape tool to select these bottom two nodes, hit Control on the keyboard, zoom up. Now I'm going to resize. Maybe I'll put that one just there. Well, actually, let's put it just to the side. Now go back. The final image that I want to grab is that very rough sketch that I made last lesson. That actually exists in my drive, my Google My Drive. So when I click it, it's just simply referencing that document. I'm going to right mouse click, hopefully. Actually, it's not going to let me do that. I think because it wants to open up as a PDF document. So I'm actually going to download that image. Now you can see it here. Now the way to get an image into CorelDraw when it's a file is to go File, Import, and then go to the folder where the image is downloaded. In this case, it's the download folder. Click it, import, and then left mouse click. Okay, now I'm going to use the zoom tool to get back. Now again, I'm going to use the shape tool to trim this image down. This time I'm going to trim at the left and the right. Trim a bit off the bottom. Now this one actually is going to represent what I'm actually going to draw. So I'm going to try and position and resize that so that it feels, again, this is only rough. Now if I go to Align and Distribute over here, this Docker, and I hit this button here, Page Edge, when I now hit Center and Center, it actually places it or positions it centrally relative to the page. Okay, so I've got my two technical documents here, which are really just for reference. I've got my rough sketch. Now, before we start adding the images, the shapes to actually construct our shape, which I'll show you in the next video, being able to hide certain images and make certain images visible is really useful, because at times you only want to see one particular part of the image and only be able to select certain parts, certain objects or certain shapes. So the way that we can do that is if we go Window, Dockers, and we click Objects. Now this new Docker appears on the right here. Now we're currently accessing layer 1, and everything that we've pasted in and everything that we've done up to this point exists on layer 1. So what I'm going to do is just left mouse click, double left mouse click, and I'm going to actually rename that layer to reference, because these images are only for reference. Now I can actually change the name of the object. In this case, it's the JPEG video. So I'm going to call that sketch. Now the bitmap here is actually a plan document. And this one here is the color document. And then there's this rectangle here that we created last lesson in the last video tutorial. But we don't actually need that. But just to show you, using this Docker, if we drag the shape, it actually places it in terms of ordering on top of the other objects. Now in this case we don't actually want this object, so I'm going to right mouse click and then delete. Okay, now we've got this reference, these reference documents, but actually they're only really for some to look at. So what I'm going to actually do is, if you look up here, there's these little icons here. Now this one actually hides, so if we don't want to see them for whatever reason, we can turn them on and off. They're still there. Or we can lock them, which means that we now can't accidentally click and move them. Or we can actually disable or enable whether they'll print if we print this document out, which isn't actually relevant in this instance. So I'm actually going to lock that layer and then just hide the contents of that layer there. Now I'm going to create a bunch of layers, or at least one or two layers that I think I'm going to use to create the actual object itself. This is preparing for what I'll show you in the next video. So if I go to the little cog icon in the top, layer, new layer, there it is. I'll double click and I'm going to call that, actually I'm going to call that base shapes. Now on the base shapes, because when you draw shapes, shapes exist on top of each other. In order to draw this, and actually this is how you would code the object, the things that you code first, or the objects that you create first, exist at the back. And everything that you code or that you create after that sits on top. So what we've got to do is, next video reel, is think about the shapes that make up the background. We have to do those before we do things like the windows and the doors and the circles. Okay, now on top of that, I think I'm going to add another layer for the tracks. Now obviously with your diagrams, you're going to create your own layers because you're doing something completely different. I know some of my students are doing things like submarines. Tracks, I could create another layer for windows stroke registers. Okay, so anyway, that's everything that I wanted to show you in this video reel. In the next video reel, we'll obviously start to construct or add the shapes to construct the actual diagram, and I'll explain a bit more about that in the next video. Thanks for watching.